I had a really wild week this week. Sunday, got to see Betty out at a Pride rally doing their thing. Got to march and dance and shake it all the way down Fifth Avenue with so many middle people, but not until after I had consumed what seemed to be a very delicious avocado spread on a croissant with sliced boiled egg on top. I mean, it was delicious. And I ate it and I marched. And at midnight on Monday morning, the croissant with the avocado and the egg revisited me. It said hello in a very powerful way. It knocked on the door of my, yes, that door, many times over the next 30 hours. I got some really good reading done, reading that I had been postponing. Okay, good. Just go with that. Just be there for just a second. And God's going to set this world on fire, but my butt was on fire. There's not enough soft paper in the world. All right, come back. It was really, really a rough week. Monday was a hard day. Tuesday was a really hard day. By Wednesday, I was almost back. But I think I was suffering all week from the stomach emptying, horrible, sick feeling, make you want to curl up in a ball and die kind of feeling. Does anybody else ever have that happen to them? But you didn't get to tell about it on Sunday. That was horrifying. I thought it was a shared experience. It was terrible. And I was so sick that I found myself thinking about my mom's sick. I just found myself connecting to what it was like for her all those 7 years that she wrestled with cancer, to be sort of dealing with stomach sick and dealing with head sick and dealing with heart sick and dealing with all the complications that happen when you're putting poison in your body, kill other poison. I found myself feeling very vulnerable, very weak. And in that vulnerable place, really connected to her vulnerability. And many of you have asked me, how am I doing with her death? I found myself just really socked in the stomach with tears a couple of times. And I was sort of asking myself, what is this teary about? Because at the same time, back to my stomach analogy, I also felt light. Are you with me? Yeah. A kind of out-of-body almost lightness at the same time as this terrible heart-sick crying. And I found myself in my prayers saying, Mommy, what are you trying to tell me? And I thought that I was being liberated from something, freed up from something, for something. Like space was being made in me for something else. Something beyond my mom is dying. Something beyond my mom has died. Some other space being made in me, a lightening up in me for something else. Gifts from her. And I hope this makes sense to you, but I felt that what I was crying for in those heavy cries wasn't actually Mommy dead, but actually the things that were coming up around Mommy dying. Are you with me? Are you with me? So what's coming up around Mom dying? It's the things that are psychologically, people would say, caffected to her, connected to her, energy bound up in my mom. Energy bound up in my mom that is about me. Energy bound up in trying to please her, for example. Energy bound up in not really having as much of a childhood as my siblings because I was the comadre. In other words, grief. Not just about her dying, but grief about the way we lived. grief about the way we lived. Grief about family system stuff. Grief about when we talk and when we don't talk. Grief about the way we talk to each other. Grief about hidden, secretive things even that you can't really say out loud because it's not politic to say out loud. But that doesn't mean that they didn't cause you pain and heartache. And so I cried and cried and cried and felt a kind of loosening, a kind of liberation happening around those things. In other words, I can now say out loud, that hurt. I can now admit freely that this thing disappointed me, that the mother who died was not a perfect person. She was my mama. She was my mommy. But our dynamic, her life, my life, also had stuff in it. And I feel inside myself now, every time she said, I love you, I love you, I love you. Do you know how much I love you? Can you feel how much I love you, I love you, I love you? Almost she was also saying, I'm sorry. I love you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see that about you. I'm sorry I didn't say that better. I'm sorry I didn't show up this way. I'm sorry I wasn't a perfect mommy, and I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I think, wow, Mom's death is giving me a gift that she couldn't even give in life. A gift she couldn't give in life because I couldn't receive it in life. I couldn't receive her gift in life, in her life. I couldn't receive her confession of just being a human being. Are you guys with me? Our parents, the people we love, the people who love us, they're just people who love us. And they're complicated like we're complicated, and they mess up like we mess up. And we're all bound up sometimes in our family systems in this kind of dance of a fib, a lie, a perpetration, a persona, false self. We don't get to be honest to say, hey, I adore you, and that makes me crazy about you. And in her dying, those times in the hospital, just staring at me, talking to me, I love you, I love you, I love you, I'm sorry, I love you, I love you. Be free. She was saying to be free. She was trying to liberate me to be the woman I'm supposed to be, not just her daughter, but me, a grown woman, free to be who I am, not in relation to her, but in relation to myself. Right? So then here's this text. And I picked it. It's not in the lectionary, which we sometimes feel tethered to, shackled to. But I picked this text to reflect on for me. I, who am always talking to you about how we're called to liberate those people. Let's march for Black Lives Matter. Let's stand up for the rights of women. Let's stand up for the rights of trans people. Let's stand in the gap for LGBTQ people. Let's stand up for the immigrants. Let's stand up for the homeless. Let's feed the hungry. That's my sermon over and over and over again, with different texts to support it, right? But I wondered, what's it like for us to think of ourselves as anointed with Spirit to liberate ourselves? What if we are called by that same God who's asking us to go to the margins and heal and touch and make a safe space? What if that God is also saying to us, you, my child, you deserve liberation as well. And you've got to get busy doing it for yourself so you can, in fact, then do the other stuff. How free can we make the world when we're enshackled with our own stuff? You know the stuff that binds us. But let me just remind us of a few. One, ungrieved grief. Ungrieved grief can sit in our bodies like a cancer. And we've sort of have an injury, a wound, a hurt, a loss of a job, a loss of an opportunity, a loss of hope, a loss of faith in someone, a loss of innocence. And we quickly get told to stuff it down, get over it, stick it away. Nobody wants to hear that, see that. And then suddenly you build a big prison for yourself around that grief. And you can't live a real life. Psychologist Donald Winnicott would say when we do that, when we create for ourselves a kind of false self, a false self, we're really dead inside. And in fact, some people kill themselves to get free, kill themselves to free themselves from that false self. So ungrieved grief puts us in prison. Amen? And then let me add on to that, and then let's think about how we get to it. 2, unforgiveness puts us in prison. Now, I want to be really clear. This might really freak you out, but I'm going to say it. But I think there are some things that are daggone impossible to forgive. Just about impossible to forgive. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the pressure to forgive puts us in prison too. We're gonna pull that up one more time later, but not now. It's exactly right. I said, when I say that word, do that song. Yeah. You did right. You don't have your script, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna say that word more than once. So we can think of it as it's almost impossible, and then the pressure to do it also puts us in prison. Are you with me? Yeah. So I'm just talking about the true kind of forgiveness, the real kind of, like, I'm going to carry around the thing that happened to me as a badge of honor rather than let it go, is what I'm talking about, right? It's as a badge of honor. Remember when you called me a butthead? I'm never gonna let that go because it defines us. It strengthens us. It makes us feel brave because we still got that thing. You with me? That's what I'm talking about. And I think a third thing, and there's lots more, and my therapist would be like, there's 25 more, but let's just work with one more. That's 37 more. But let's just think about, so like the kind of ungrieved grief, unforgiven wrongs. And the third thing I'm going to say puts us in prison is a false sense of perfection or the need to be perfect. Now, you might wonder why I picked those 3 out of the 37 that Lila knows I could pick, because they're my crap, okay? So we're clear, that's my stuff. I'm clear that there are things that happened in my life that I built my sunshiny personality around, so I don't have to look at them. I'm clear that there's something in my life I wish I could forgive and I can't, and I struggle about that, and I feel in hell about that. And I'm really clear that I can do it makes me feel in control. Do I have allies in the room that understand what I'm talking about? So I'm asking you to join me in a project this summer called Independence Summer, or better, Liberation Summer. And I can't tell you what your 3 things are, but I want you to look at the bulletin right now, and I want you to put at least 1 down. And if you know you have 3, write 3. Just like, what like in those little spaces where I've got the words, like, what do you need to let go of? I told John I'm terrified of this sermon because who knows what I'll say when I'm trying to be really honest. What are the things that you, for your liberation project, what are you going to put on the table? I know I need to be free of this, this, and this to be all right, okay? And secondly, you got that? You writing? Making notes? It's in the bulletin. I put them in the center panel, right? Secondly, in that space where we're all bound up, like think about that. I'm bound up around my mom. Like I'm bound up around God, if I'm just good enough, if I'm just perfect enough, if I just show up enough, we're all that kind of junk with my mom. So then you're in a dyad with somebody. You're in a dynamic with somebody where your stuff is making their stuff tough. So where's that? Where's the place where you're like, and also, if I work on my freedom, I can free Jane, or I can free my father, or I can free my brother Bob, or I can free that guy, in Mississippi, all right? Like some place where you know your stuff is bound up in somebody else's stuff, and you're going to point your love at that. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? My sister, Wanda, if you ever see this, I love you. I hope you forgive me for saying this out loud. My sister and I were best friends forever until we weren't best friends. And our energy got caught up in a dynamic that has really nothing to do with us. Nothing at all to do with the two of us. And so we have a coffee date Monday morning. Is that tomorrow? To just sit together and just talk a little bit about how we're going to be now. Because we can let some of that go. Damn, I'm 58 years old. Don't tell anybody. And she's 56. We don't have to be in the 22-year-old dynamic anymore, right? So that's another gift that's coming from the loss of mom is just, doggone it, these things are urgent. You don't want to really live the rest of your life in your 22-year-old self or your 40-year-old self. Amen? So what are we going to do about that? So that's just an example of what I mean. Where's that place? And then the third piece of this is, I just want to ask you to join me in, really, I'm going to keep preaching sermons about out and go and do and justice because that's who I am and that's what I feel called to. But I want to ask you to stay in a conversation with me about this interior work. I want you to use my Facebook page or middle page or what will I see, Christina? Because I don't know. Where's Christina? What's the best way? Come up and say it louder. 20 on my Facebook wall? Can you go to my Facebook page and write on my wall? What is my page? I don't know. I go to it. I don't know what it's called. At Reverend Jacqui Lewis? Okay. At Reverend Jacqui Lewis. Write that down. Can we hold each other accountable? I'm going to post the Summer of Liberation posts. I'm going to work on my stuff. Will you work on yours with me? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's time for me to stop talking and go to communion. But when we're coming to communion today, you're going to hear us say words like this. The one who causes us to celebrate his living presence was anointed with Spirit to preach liberty, release, sight where there was blindness. That's the job. And that means we also are the beneficiaries of that liberation. The Christ was clear that this work was inny and outy. It's us, and it's us. So this isn't like extraordinary sermon time. This is ordinary time. Of course, we're supposed to free ourselves. Of course, we're supposed to heal our souls and heal the world. Of course, this is our job as church. So I'm inviting you also to make a safe enough space, a brave enough space, as Lynn would say, for us to have these conversations here and at home. How well can we be? How well? How well can we be? Amen? Amen. Amen.